that we'll go over, ladies and gentlemen, is how to rewrite numbers using imaginary numbers. So we have imaginary numbers, which everybody kind of remembers because you have I and you think of imaginary. But we're actually, when we have the imaginary number system, we're actually also going to include what we call complex numbers. And complex numbers include imaginary numbers. Complex numbers are in the form of a plus bi, which I wrote over there, where a and b are real numbers. So a and b represent real numbers, and I represents that square root of -1. But they're complex numbers because what they do is they contain a real part. I hate these markers. They contain a real and a imaginary part. All right? So when we're looking at this, Jasmine, you can see that there's a real and there's an imaginary part for this. All right? So in this form, if I'm asking you to rewrite this as a complex number, we're going to want to write it in this format. So the first thing I notice is I have the square root of -24, which I can write using my imaginary number system. The first thing I'm going to do is separate a, b, I is the imaginary part. A is the real part.
No, I just think that A and B are the real numbers.
Yes, a and b are real numbers.
A and B are the real numbers.
So I can simplify this. Now I have 5 minus the square root of 24 times -1. Now we know, obviously, square root of -1 is just going to be I. And then what we want to do is, well, we can't take the square root of 24, but we can simplify the square root of 24. So I can rewrite this as 5 minus the square root of 6. I'm sorry, let's do it this way. 4 times 6 times -1. Does everybody agree with me that 4 times 6 times -1 equals -24? Yes? Now, the reason why I chose 4 and 6 rather than, I don't know, 12 and 2 is because 4 is a square number. And I can take the square root of 4. And also, -I, or -1, I can rewrite that as I. So my final answer would be 5 minus 2 square root of 6 I, where a is equal to 5 and b is equal to -2 square root of 6. Do you guys see that this is in the standard form where a is a real number and b is a real number, and we just have our I, which represents our imaginary unit? Does that make sense? OK? So when we're doing our answers, you're always going to want to make sure it's written in your answer is always written in a plus bi formats.